Hi guys, and welcome back to my channel. It's your girl Nadine, and thank you guys for tuning in to a brand new video. So in today's video I'll be talking about the pros and cons for either staying where you trained after qualifying or going to a new hospital after qualifying and becoming a registered midwife. So I've been seeing all your comments, your DMs, your messages, and you guys want to know what the advantages or disadvantages of staying or leaving, and I'll also be talking about my personal experience and why I chose to go to a new hospital rather than stay and work at the hospital I trained in. And also, to make this fair, I asked some of my colleagues to explain to me why they decided to stay where they trained and also why they decided to leave where they trained and start somewhere new. So we'll be talking about all of that in today's video. We're going to dive deep into it, and hopefully this video will be helpful to you if you're thinking about staying or leaving. So without further ado, let's get started with today's video. So let me start by explaining why I chose to go to a new hospital rather than stay where I trained. So there were three reasons why I decided to make that big decision. So the first reason was because of the distance from where I trained to my house, and the second reason was the preceptorship program and how it differed from where I trained and the new place that I was looking into, and the third place was the people that I trained with and the mentors that I had, and basically the hospital in general. So let's start with the first reason, and the first reason was distance. So the distance for me was a big factor into the reason why I decided to leave the hospital where I trained. So obviously, as you know, as a student midwife, you don't really get a say where you go in terms of hospital. They kind of just place you in a hospital that is affiliated or they have a partnership with that university. So if you go to a university that is far from your home, then most likely the hospital that you will be placed in will be far from your home. So that was the situation for me. So the hospital that I was placed in, I basically had no say in it. I basically was placed in a hospital that was 2 hours away from my home. So my journey to placement took about 2 hours to get there and also 2 hours to get back. So I spent 4 hours of my day traveling to placement and also coming back, 2 hours there and 2 hours back. So after qualifying, I was like, I am not doing that anymore. Like, if I have a say in where I have to go and work as a qualified midwife, this is one thing that I am going to make a change in. So I decided to put my foot down and be like, you know what, I was comfortable where I was trained. I was there for 3 years. I know the people, I know the routine, but the travel is a big problem for me. I did not want to travel 2 hours every single day or every time I had work. 2 hours there and 2 hours back. I just didn't want to do it anymore. So that is one of the big reasons as to why I decided to change my hospital and go somewhere closer to me, where I basically traveled a maximum of an hour. If it was less than an hour, great, that was a bonus, but my maximum time was an hour. So that is one reason, or one main reason, as to why I chose to go to a new hospital and not stay where I trained, because the travel was just too much for me and I spent so much time traveling back and forth to placement. I didn't want to do that anymore. So the second reason as to why I decided to move hospitals and go to a new place was because of the preceptorship program. So for those that have been watching my videos previously, you guys would already know about the preceptorship program. What is that all about? But if you don't know what the preceptorship program, I will link the video in my description box below so you guys can watch it and have an understanding of what a preceptorship program is. But the preceptorship program for the hospital where I trained in was not that great. So I looked into it. I would ask the other newly qualified midwife how the preceptorship program was, and if they were effective, and if they were being supported, and if there were things that were lacking. And I just didn't like the response and the things that they were saying to me. So they weren't being supported, they were being rushed to complete their competencies, and they basically weren't given that time to basically basically bridge the gap from student to qualified midwife, and I did not like that at all. So I decided to go and look for preceptorship programs that had more structure, that had more support, that supported the newly qualified midwife after they qualified. So where I work now, the preceptorship program was amazing compared to where I trained, and it was another reason as to why I decided to not stay where I trained. So the travel was one, and the preceptorship program was another thing. So the last and final reason why I chose to leave the hospital where I trained was because of the mentors that I had and some of the staff that I worked with as a student midwife. So some of the mentors, of course you have amazing mentors, but that was very, very rare at the hospital where I trained. Most of the mentors were not that great. They were not that eager to work with students. They were not supportive. They didn't like students, and that energy literally drained me. And when I was there for 3 years, I literally dreaded to go to work if I knew I was with a certain or particular mentor, or I was in a certain particular department or place, because I knew how they basically were, and I knew how bad they were towards students, and I knew how bad they were to even other staff members, and it just wasn't a great time for me in those 3 years. So that was another reason why I chose to go to a new hospital, because I just didn't like the bad vibes. Okay, they were giving me bad vibes, and I was like, do I really want you to be my colleague now that I'm qualified and I am, you know, registered midwife, and I'm on the same level as you? Because I don't know if things will change or you will still be bad vibes after I qualify. So that was another reason as to why I decided to go to a new hospital, because of the bad vibes of the people and the bad mentors that I had worked with previously. So I was like, no way am I having them be my colleague after I qualify. So those were the 3 main reasons as to why I decided to go to a new hospital. So the distance and the location of the hospital, the preceptorship program, and the mentors or the staff members that I had worked with for the past 3 years. All those 3 things impacted my decision to going to a new hospital. So currently where I work now, to get to work, it takes me about an hour to get to work. On a very, very good day, it takes me about 45 to 50 minutes to get to work. And also the preceptorship program has been amazing. I'm no longer on the preceptorship program. I have finished my preceptorship program, but the preceptorship program and my journey as a newly qualified midwife has been so amazing, and we've been so supportive. So that is a plus and a good reason as to why I decided to leave. And also the staff that I currently work with at the moment in my new hospital have been so amazing and so supportive, and literally I feel like I have made the best decision for me, and I do not regret it at all. So let's talk about the pros or the advantages for staying where you trained. So the first obviously pro or advantage for staying where you trained is because you know the people have been with you for the past 3 years or so, however long it took you to finish your degree. They have literally been with you on that journey, and you know the people, you're familiar with the people and everybody in the different departments that you worked with as a student. So staying where you trained, you are comfortable in your environment because you know the people and you are comfortable with the people. And if you like those people, the journey or the transition from student to midwife will be just as easy for you as anybody else. So the first pro for staying where you trained is that the people are familiar to you. You know them, you've known them for 3 years or however long it took you to finish your midwifery degree course, and you're not having to learn new people's names, and you're not having to start in a new environment where you don't know people and you have to basically start from the beginning. So the first pro is that you know the people that you're working with after qualifying. So the second pro for staying where you trained is that you know the place. The place is familiar to you, you've been there for so long or however long it took you to finish your degree course. The place is familiar to you, the wards are familiar to you, the community is familiar to you if you're out in the community, the clinics and every single department in maternity is familiar to you because you would have worked there as a student during your orientation period and when you was working in all the different areas in maternity. So even the route to go to your hospital is familiar to you. You're not out here getting lost, you're not out here making new travel routes and things like that. The place and the route is familiar to you. You don't have to relearn a new place, you don't have to familiarize yourself to a new place. So the place is familiar to you, which makes things a lot easier for you as you transition from student to qualified midwife. So another pro for staying where you trained is that you already know all the policies, the procedures and the protocols, or how things are done in that hospital. You're not having to learn new protocols, you're not having to learn new policies or new guidelines. So as you transition from student to qualified midwife, you don't have the stress of learning the new policies or guidelines. You're basically starting where you trained and you already know how things are done, you already know the system, you already know what to do in terms of emergencies there, you already know how to document, you already know the policies and the procedures on how things are done within that hospital. So that is one big advantage for staying where you trained. You already know the system, so that is one big advantage for staying where you trained. You already know the policies, you already know the procedures, you already know how things are done, and you're not having to ask people, or you're not having to run around crazy looking for things and trying to figure out how the system works. You basically have been there as a student midwife, and now that you're qualified, you basically know how things are run and the policies and protocols and basically the whole system in that hospital. So you just focus on basically getting your competencies and feeling comfortable as a newly qualified midwife, rather than trying to figure out all of that stuff out and also the environment, the policies and the guidelines all together. So that is one big advantage of staying where you trained. So another pro for staying where you trained is that if you're someone that doesn't like change, you like things to stay the same, you don't like to be pushed into a new situation or a new scenario, then this one is for you. Basically, the things that you are used to, the environment that you are used to, the people that you are used to stay the same. So every morning or every time you go to a shift, you know where the handover room is, you know where the changing room is, you know the staff rooms, you know where you go for break, you know how they operate when they go for break. Basically, things don't change for you. The routine stays the same, and you're not basically put in a new situation or a new environment where things have changed. If you're a person that doesn't like to be in an environment where things are different, and if you don't like change in your life, then staying where you trained will be an advantage for you, because things stay the same. You know the routine of the hospital, you know the structure, you know how things are done, you know where to go for certain things, you know who to talk to for certain things. So basically things stay the same. If you're the type of person that doesn't like change or doesn't like to be put in new situations or new environments, the pro for staying where you trained is that things remain the same, your routine stays the same. So let's move on and talk about the disadvantages of staying where you trained. The first disadvantage that one of my colleagues mentioned is that the lack of respect that you still have after qualifying, because they still see you as a student midwife. So what my colleague said to me, who stayed where she trained, is that because she stayed where she trained, the senior midwives or the midwives that were her mentors, that looked after her as a student midwife, didn't give her the respect that she was due after she qualified as a registered midwife. So the lack of respect is there. They still see you as a student midwife. They don't give you your grace. They don't allow you to embrace the fact that you are qualified. They still see you, or they still send you on little jobs or little runabouts, because they still see you as a student midwife. So that is one disadvantage for staying where you train, is that they don't give you the respect that you need, because they still see you as a student midwife and they don't see you as a qualified midwife after qualifying. So that is one thing that my colleague mentioned to me that she has dealt with from staying where she trained. So another disadvantage for staying where you trained that my colleague also mentioned was the fact that when you have trained there as a student midwife, they don't give you your allocated supernumerary time when you are, a preceptorship midwife. So a supernumerary basically means you're not counted in the numbers when you come on shift. You are basically an extra or someone that needs to be supported rather than counted in the numbers, and you are basically given another another senior midwife to work alongside that can show you the ropes and that can basically train you and show you how things are done. And she said because she has trained there before, she was not given the supernumerary time because she was seen, oh, you've worked here before, you've been here as a student midwife for 3 years, therefore you don't need to have your supernumerary time. And I feel like that is so out of order, and I feel like every newly qualified midwife needs to have their supernumerary time, whether they have trained there or not. They need to have their supernumerary time. So if you do not get your supernumerary time, guys, be sure to make a stand and let someone know that you are owed a supernumerary time. So the disadvantage for her for staying where she trained is that she didn't get her supernumerary time because she was seen as someone that has been there for so many years and therefore didn't need that supernumerary period. But obviously everybody needs that supernumerary period whether you've been there or not, is because when you were there you were a student midwife and obviously you had a mentor doing everything alongside you. So the supernumerary time, you are now qualified and you are expected to do so many things on your own, so you need that supernumerary time. So that is one big disadvantage, that you are not allocated or given that supernumerary time because you are seen that you have been there for so many years and no longer need it. So to add on to the previous point about supernumerary is that one of my colleagues mentioned that because they have seen you as a student midwife for so many years, you are basically not guided the same way as a newly qualified midwife coming in from another hospital, the same way as them, because obviously they're new and you have been there for 3 years or so. You are not guided the same or offered the same support and opportunities as someone that has come in afresh from a new hospital. So that is one disadvantage that she mentioned. You are not given the grace, you're not given the support that you need because you are seen as someone that has been there for so many years. So if you are looking for something or you need to know how things are done, they basically don't support you in that sense because they feel like you've been there for so many years. But if it was a newly qualified midwife that you guys have finished on the same time at the same level, they are offered more support because they are seen as someone coming into a new environment and they need more support than you do just because they're coming in from somewhere else. So that is one disadvantage that my colleague mentioned, is that they are not supported the same way as other newly qualified midwives that join the trust because they are seen as they've been there for so many years and they don't need that support because they've been there for so many years. So that is the last disadvantage for staying where you trained. Okay, so let's talk about the pros for going to a new hospital and leaving the trust where you trained. So the first pro for going to a new hospital, if you're someone like me, is the fact that you get to meet new people and work with new people at the new hospital where you apply to. You get to meet other newly qualified midwives, you get to also meet other midwives that have been in that trust, you get to see new doctors, new consultants, new healthcare assistants, new maternity assistants, and basically you get to be in a new environment where you see other people and new people compared to staying where you train, where you are seeing familiar faces that you may not like or you may not want to be around. Going to a new hospital allows you to work with new people and new faces and be around new energy and good vibes if you are leaving bad vibes at your old place where you trained. So that is one good advantage for going to a new hospital, is that you get to meet new people. So another pro or another advantage for going to a new place after qualifying is that you get to expand your knowledge and you basically get to test your knowledge and basically learn new things in a new trust. So if you stay where you train, you're basically not expanding your knowledge as much as if you were going to a new trust. So a new trust has different rules, different procedures, different guidelines, and different ways of doing things. So you get to test your knowledge and you basically get to expand your experience, your skills, and your competence. And basically this allows you to expand on your knowledge and your experience if you are basically placed in a new environment where you have to learn new things. So one advantage is that you basically get to expand on your experience and expand on your knowledge and basically test yourself because you are being put in a new environment where you basically have to learn and adjust your way of doing midwifery. Although midwifery is the same wherever you go, there's different ways of doing certain things depending on the hospital that you work in. So that is another advantage of going to a new place, is that you get to expand on your knowledge and on your experience and also test yourself on what you then learned as a student midwife. So another advantage is that if you're someone that wants a new start or wants a fresh start, is that you get to be placed in a new environment where this allows. So basically going to a new trust allows you to have basically a clean slate and a fresh start from what you have known or what you have been used to over the 3 years or so training at the same hospital. So going to a new trust allows you to be in a new work environment, be around new people, a new place, a new route, and basically have a fresh start and start afresh in a new environment, whether it is starting your reputation from scratch, whether you had a good or bad one. If you want to start afresh or start in a new environment where you have a clean slate, then going to a new trust allows this. It allows you to start from scratch and start from a place where there is no preconceived ideas about you, or where you can basically start anew and start doing things afresh. And if you just want a fresh way of doing things, or fresh mentality, or a fresh new environment, or fresh people, the new hospital or going to a new hospital then allows this. So one advantage of this is that you get to go into a new environment where you have a fresh start or a clean slate, and this is because you have gone to a new hospital which allows this. So another advantage or another pro that one of my colleagues mentioned to me is that going to a new hospital allows them to have a new impression of themselves when it comes to their colleagues and the people that they work with. They don't have the same preconceived ideas of them when they were student midwives. So going to a new place allows them to be new people or have new impressions of themselves. So if they were seen in a particular light or in a different type of way as a student midwife, whether it's bad or good, they get to go to a new place where they have a new impression of themselves, and they basically don't have to take along the same stigma or the same impressions that they had when they were student midwives. So they go to a new place, start afresh, and people have new conceived ideas about them. They build a relationship with new people, and they basically have new impressions on them, rather than having old ideas or old preconceived ideas, whether it's bad or good, of them as student midwives. So you basically start afresh when it comes to the impression that you basically portray when you start as a newly qualified midwife, rather than your colleagues having preconceived ideas and old impressions of you as student midwife. You get to start somewhere where they have new impressions of you and new ideas of you, and they basically get to learn you for you as a newly qualified midwife, rather than you as a student midwife. So that is one good advantage of going to a new trust. So another advantage that my colleagues mentioned was, which is a good one, is that the hospital that they basically applied for and the new hospital that they went to offered a better pay for them as newly qualified midwives, whereas the hospital that they trained in didn't offer a great pay when it came to paying newly qualified midwives. So that's something that people look into. They want to see where the pay is great and decide to move where the money resides. So if the money resides at a new hospital and that's something that you are looking into and that's something that will motivate you for moving, then that is something you will need to look into. So one of my colleagues moved to the hospital that I currently work in, and her reasons was because they pay a lot more for newly qualified midwife compared to where she trained. So that is a big advantage for going to a new hospital. If the current hospital you work in and you've trained in as a student midwife doesn't pay newly qualified midwife what you would expect or what you would like, then looking into a new hospital that pays more is a very good reason for going to a new hospital rather than staying. So going to a new place that pays more is also a good advantage or a good pro for leaving the hospital that you trained in and going somewhere new. So other things that they mentioned as to why they decided to go to a new trust was things like the location of the hospital hospital, they wanted to move somewhere closer to their home, which is the same as me. I wanted to go somewhere that was closer to me, so their reasons was also to go to a new place that was closer to them, and also because they wanted a change. They wanted a change in environment and a change in scenery, so they decided to go somewhere new. So those are also other reasons and other pros and other advantages of going to somewhere new rather than staying where you trained. So let's dive into the disadvantages and the cons for going somewhere new after qualifying and becoming a qualified midwife. So let's talk about the disadvantages of this. So the first disadvantage of going to a new place after qualifying is that you have to now learn new policies, new guidelines and new protocols, and basically understand a new system. So this was a thing for me, but I overcome it because the pros outweigh the negatives. So if you're someone that doesn't like to learn new policies and new guidelines and new protocols and learning how to do things from scratch, then this is a disadvantage to you. So going to a new hospital, you will then have to learn how things are done in that hospital. If they have certain policies and protocols that are different to where you trained, you can't just say this is how I trained and this is how we did it where I trained. You have to learn those new policies and those new guidelines in the new hospital. So if you're someone that will struggle in that aspect, then going to a new hospital isn't for you, because you will have to go to a new hospital and learn their policies and their guidelines and how they do things. And obviously this may differ or this may be the same to where you trained. So you just need to basically weigh it up and see whether you can manage this or not. But one disadvantage is that the policies and the procedures will be different or can be different compared to where you train. So another disadvantage that basically ties into what I just said previously is that you may have to learn a whole new system when it comes to how they document and how they do their documentation. Let me give you guys a bit of background on my situation and how it was like for me. So where I trained, I basically, from the 3 years I was a student midwife, we basically had to handwrite everything. All our documentation was handwritten. So when I then moved to a new hospital and I joined a new trust, I found out that everything was online and they did electronic documentation. So I then had to learn a whole new system and I had to basically familiarize myself on how they documented, because everything was online. So I basically had to forget all my handwritten documentation and how we used to handwrite everything, and I basically had to learn how to document everything online and basically learn their system. Obviously I had the training and I had the support, but that is something to consider if you're thinking about going to a new trust. Do they document, or is the system that they use similar to what you're used to, or is there something different? And are you happy or comfortable in learning a new system or a new way of documenting? I was happy to learn this new system. I was, down for this new thing of, documenting online. I did not have a problem with it, but some people may have a problem with the new system and how things operate. So you will need to look into how their system operates and what they do in terms of documentation. It may be different to you and how you operated as a student midwife. So that is one disadvantage of going to a new trust, is that the system is different and they may be doing their documentation and things like that differently to where you train. So the last disadvantage that I have for going to a new place after qualifying is that after you qualifying, you're basically focusing on navigating the world of being a newly qualified midwife. And if you go to a new hospital, you're adding on that added pressure of getting to know a new environment, new policies, new guidelines, new people, alongside being a newly qualified midwife. So you're basically trying to bridge the gap and transition from student to midwife, and also on top of that you're having to basically know new policies, know new guidelines, know how they run things in a new hospital, and that is just added pressure on you. But if you're someone that doesn't mind the added pressure, that doesn't mind being in a new environment and also being newly qualified midwife, then you obviously will be great. I didn't find it as hard, but obviously I was scared at first, but because I was well supported, and that is a major thing, because I was well supported in my transition, I didn't find the new hospital and the new guidelines and the new way of doing things that stressful. It didn't impact the way I was learning and transitioning to be a newly qualified midwife, if that makes sense. So if you're someone that doesn't like the added pressure of everything going on, as well as becoming a newly qualified midwife, as well as being in a new environment and all the added pressure, then going to a new hospital would be a disadvantage to you, because you're going to have to basically juggle everything at once. You're a newly qualified midwife, you're in a new environment, you're learning new things, you're meeting new people, you're having to communicate with new people, you're basically in a foreign place. If that is stressful to you, then basically going to a new hospital after qualifying just basically wouldn't do you any favors, and I would suggest staying where you trained if this is something that you will struggle with. And then I would say, if you're more comfortable in your practice after, you know, your preceptorship program, then obviously by all means go to a new hospital if this is something that you can cope with and that you are able to adjust to a new place. But that is all for today's video. Thank you guys for tuning in to yet another video, and thank you guys for subscribing if you have subscribed and joined my YouTube family, and I'll see you guys in my next video. So until then, bye guys.